Hey everybody, welcome to the In All Things podcast. It's time to see God in everything. All right, well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the In All Things podcast. My name is Mitch Frost, and I'm here with Pastor Steve Markle. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
Good. You always say you're good. Are you good?
I am good. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
You
mean it? You
really
really
mean it. I know that's a common answer, but yeah, I mean it.
I think every episode you're like, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Do you mean it? Yeah. Are you good?
I'm tired. I'm good.
Yeah.
I missed the gym this morning.
You did.
So
that was disappointing.
David did too, so I'm not alone.
I know. Yeah, that was bad.
My alarm went off at 6. I checked it, put my phone down, rubbed my eyes, woke up at 7:20. So
yes.
One of those mornings. Christy had the same type of morning. We were just talking about it. She did the same thing.
So I'm the only one that went to the gym today.
Yep.
So far.
There you go.
All right, that's okay.
Jared doesn't go in the morning, so we can't count him. He goes at night.
Yeah.
But anyway, how was yesterday? Sunday
Funday.
Wow.
It was fun.
Okay. What about it?
I mean, again, we continue to build. You can feel it. Building toward Easter and more people coming back. And I think it's more and more new people. And we had the last few weeks, the number of guest bags we've given away to first-time guests has been more than we've had in months. So that's kind of exciting. Meeting new people from the neighborhood around us, other people that are just bringing guests. So that's very, very, very exciting. So, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Challenge the Norm series that we're doing here is wrapping up.
Yep.
So how did you feel about yesterday's?
Good. Again, it was the anointing of Jesus by Mary in Bethany right before Palm Sunday. So it really fit into the timeline of what's happening, what we're doing. So I felt good about it. Felt like it went well. I'm sad to see the series end. There's so many things that we could have done in the book of Mark, so many stories, but I feel like we picked out the best ones. And
7 weeks is a long series, though.
It is. It is.
So what, was this technically week 6 then? Yesterday?
This was week 6 yesterday.
Okay, so Easter will be 7.
Yeah.
But that's a long series compared to what we usually do.
For us, I know. And some churches would just say, well, just preach through the book of Mark as long as it takes. And if it takes the whole year, then do that.
Yeah.
That's not what we do.
No, not
but
always.
Anyway.
Hey, but it's been good.
Yeah, how about your night last night with the well?
Good. Very normal night for us. Nothing too crazy or exciting. We got to go outside, so that was cool.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we've been outside for like games and whatnot.
Yes.
So that was exciting because the sun was out and it was warm somewhat. So
utilizing that basketball hoop that we got.
Yeah, we put in a basketball hoop last year right before
winter.
So we're just now using that.
Yeah.
So that was nice. People were loving that. Yeah, it was a good night.
Good.
So it's good.
Yeah.
It's weird because we won't have another Sunday night until May.
Right.
May 1st.
Easter and then Strongholds. So, yeah, a lot going on. Yeah.
So busy next couple of weeks, but it's just weird. We were saying that last night, like, this is the last time we'll be together on a Sunday night until May. So
that's
it's kind of
crazy.
weird.
Yeah.
But exciting stuff coming up. So this week's Easter week, right, which is a big week for anybody involved in the church staff, church people, whoever. Like, this is just one of those big weeks. So what does this week look like for us?
For us, we have a lot of preparation. We're doing some special things. We're not going to give it away here, but for Good Friday, we have a service. We almost every year do this on Good Friday. It's different from Sunday. It's a completely separate service, a lot more worship, not as much in terms of preaching, just a short devotional and communion. But we're doing some other really creative elements that we're excited about. So we got a lot of work to do in the worship center this week to get ready for that. And then Sunday, of course, big day, Easter, just preparing for a packed house twice. Yeah. So that's really cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. Last week when we were kind of planning some Good Friday stuff, we kind of had this idea and ran with it, and it's going to be cool. It's
It is going to be different.
So that's exciting, but I'm sure Jared is extra pumped about all the setup and things that come with that this week. So
it's going to be a busy week. I mean, for each of us in different ways. Yeah. For you, maybe a little bit less, right? In some ways.
I don't know, because I'm preparing for Strongholds. So.
Which is 2 weeks out. So you have, it's not like, I know, you have a lot of administrative stuff to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
I
don't know if I'd say it's a light week.
Right.
It doesn't feel like it,
right.
But maybe it will be. Who knows? And then on Friday night after the worship night, me and Lexi are hosting all the high schoolers at our house to watch The Passion of the Christ. So
okay.
that's
cool.
cool.
This Friday night. Yeah.
Yep, we're all coming to worship night together, and then we're going to leave from here and go
the high school
there.
group.
So,
okay. Nice.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. That'll be different. We haven't really gotten to host a group like that at our house yet.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. Just because as we started talking about it with some of our leaders, shout out Chuck Willis and Jake Earnhardt, we started talking about how like that movie really makes it. You will never see the story and read the story again the same way. And so we just thought, this would be cool if we got some high school students together, because most of our students have not seen it. Have no really clue.
What I remember too is it's not like a popcorn and candy movie.
No.
I mean, you can do that, but it is a very intense and serious. I mean, obviously, what it's all about. So anyway,
so
that's
that'll
cool.
That'll be fun.
Good.
That'll be different. And then week after that will be go time, a weekend long retreat. So.
So you got a record number signed up. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's funny. We had registration closed on Friday, so I worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday all day.
Right.
Kind of getting all the papers ready and forms out and all the things that have to happen beforehand. And then last night at the well, we're handing out all these papers, and each paper has a student's name on it, that registered, where they're staying, all this stuff.
Right.
And I have two students come up to me like, "Hey, I need one of those papers." And I'm like, "Well, did you sign up?" "Oh, no, I need one of those." And I'm like, "We've been talking about this for 2 months, pushing this as hard as we can."
Are they new or regular students?
Regular students.
How do they not know?
I don't know. So
did you have mercy on them?
Yeah, we're gonna let them come, but it's like, come on. But anyway, so that's exciting. But it's busy.
It
busy
is.
time. Last year we didn't do it the week after Easter, so it's a little bit
right. More. Yeah, the timing. Yeah,
but it'll be good.
Anyway.
It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
So today, I want to get into our conversation. I want to talk about an issue. Maybe it's an issue. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's something that is happening more and more in the world that we live in. And I know that you don't really know exactly what we're talking about, because that's kind of how these conversations go. Yes. But I think this is something you've brought up before and kind of hinted at before. Mm-hmm. And so the kind of the fancy term that's been put with this idea is it's called compassion fatigue. Okay, so that's kind of what people are calling it, which is, I like it. But here's the idea. We now live in a world, right? And this is kind of going off the conversation we had last week of this post-Christian generation. But this Gen Z is now at a place where they care more about social issues and are kind of social activists in their own way, maybe more than we've ever seen any generation before. Like the Barna Group, which is a Christian think tank, they talk a lot about how this generation cares more about social issues than really we've ever seen. Like students that will take the time to stand up or go to protests or whatever, just post and say that they care about all these different issues. So that's the world that we live in. This younger generation is living very, hey, I care about this, I support this, I want to change this, I want to work with this, all these things, which is great. There's some awesome things about that. But the negative effect of that is that there's kind of this expectation to care about everything all the time. And if you don't care about everything, if you're not passionate about everything the way that certain people are passionate about everything, then you're canceled, or it's like you don't care very much. And so it's kind of creating this interesting paradox of like, you, Steve, you better care about this issue as much as you care about this issue. And if they're not the same in your eyes, then you're just insensitive and you don't care. And so it's kind of created this really tricky, sticky situation that I want to talk about for a little bit today of what do we do in this world that now is expecting us to care about everything on the same level all the time. Right. So any initial thoughts on this?
I think it's a great topic. I do believe that's a problem. I do believe that all of us are constantly judged for what we don't care about enough and what we do with different things that other people care about. So I think this is a topic. I think I have felt this fatigue, and I think in ministry as pastors, we always feel like we want people to know that we care, and we want to be compassionate, to listen to them and be concerned for them. When they bring things to us that they're concerned about, we want to be very caring about that. But just not even talking about big issues in our country, just the compassion fatigue of caring for people and caring about what's mattering and what's important in their life. That is something that can wear you out. And that's something that we're called to be, is compassionate. Jesus was. But what is our limit? How much can we do it? Like where until we get fatigued? And I know, it's like a fancier way of saying burned out, but I think it's a good term.
Yeah. And I think that's a good kind of like precursor to the conversation of like, Jesus has called us to be compassionate. Okay. So let's start there. Like, we are called to be compassionate. Oh my gosh. Can you hear that rain?
I hear the rain.
I wonder if they can hear it on the podcast, but it's raining. But we are called to be compassionate. That is something that Christ followers are called to be, is compassionate and looking out for those who are like hurting and outcast.
Sheep without a shepherd.
Like
things that Jesus said.
That's a real thing. Like Jesus is like, his heart broke for those who were outcasts and treated poorly and all those things, and he would go to the places of those who were in those situations and speak directly to them. And so we can't call ourselves Christ followers and not say that we should be compassionate. But where's the threshold? Where's the line? I mean, I don't think it's possible to care about every issue that exists under the sun.
No, I don't think so either.
So.
Right.
So I want to get into maybe how to do this. Where's the line between being compassionate and not burning out on compassion kind of. So that's what we're going to do.
Okay, good.
But let's start here. So let's talk about maybe the pros and cons of a world, a society that really is caring about social issues more than maybe we've ever seen. There are more things that get brought into the light of, maybe it's different months that raise awareness or different events that raise awareness. That's maybe more than ever before. There's different issues that people stand up for. I would say that's true. Of you just see more groups that, hey, we support this or we stand for this or we're here. And that. So let's talk about the pros and cons of that. Let's start with the pros. What are some positive things that come out of a generation that really does care about the groups that maybe in the last 100 years nobody cared about? What do you think?
I think there's more awareness of things than ever has been. There's more awareness of people that are hurting, of minority groups in different. And when I say minority groups, I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about people that are segments of our population that are struggling and that are neglected or dismissed. And I think raising awareness that people, just like different illnesses or diseases that people have, that a lot of us who has that? And then you find out there's millions of people with this. You see commercials for these things all the time, where you see groups that are bringing awareness, and you don't think about it until you have a family member or a friend that has it.
Right.
We have a close friend with the type 1 teenager in the youth group and one of my son's closest friends with type 1 diabetes, and he has that patch or the thing on his arm, the monitor, and you start to care more about those things when you hear that. But there are days for that, to celebrate that and to bring awareness to that particular disease. There's so many of them. And so the good thing is that we get more aware. But what you're talking about today, of course, is that there's so many of them, you can't care about all of them. Right. But anyway, so I think one of the pros is bringing awareness to people that felt like ignored before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, I think I'm from a very, I don't want to say privileged, but I don't have a lot of those issues in my own life.
Right.
And so it's I can't relate, but like you said, I know people who do. And so when I see groups that support their issues or certain causes or donations, I go towards those things and I think about those people. I'm like, oh, that's awesome that there is a group that's going to speak to their problem. Right. And in the world that we live in, there's more and more of those groups that speak to those problems. So
correct.
I do think that aspect of it is great, because if I was in that position of having that disease or being in that group, if there was a group standing up for me, I'd be like, thank you. That's awesome. You know?
Right.
And so I do think that aspect of it is really cool to watch.
Yeah.
And I think, if there is things happening in the world that are straight up wrong and injustice is happening, this generation is not afraid to speak up and talk about it, and I think that's pretty cool.
I think it's good.
I think
that aspect of it is good.
Injustice too. So I think that aspect of it is okay, that's pretty awesome, because they're not just going to sit there and be like, oh, well, I can't do anything. So, they're at least going to throw their hat in the ring a little bit and say, hey, I support you, or I'm there with you. And I think that is cool. Wow, Thunder is getting involved now.
Okay.
But I think that's cool.
The other pros that you think of besides
I mean, same thing. Just the more and more groups that I see that I could never relate to or speak to necessarily. But I see groups that are either that can relate to it and support it, or groups that are doing the work of educating people who can't relate to it. I think that's really cool. And I really enjoy those types of things. And so that's probably the pros that I could come up with off the top of my head. I don't know if you have any other ones.
No, not off the top of my head.
But I think that aspect of it is pretty awesome. So let's go to the cons. What are some negative things you see in a world where everything is beginning to be supported on the same level, passionately, by different groups all the time?
I think there's a lot of groups that bring awareness or protest or bring things up, but they don't have solutions. And that drives me crazy a little bit. It's one thing to have a big mouth and to talk about something, but then to not have any answers. Or what are ways that this could be changed or fixed in society or helped? I get some things are just about bringing awareness, but I think it's also important, how do we show compassion just by being aware? Like, what do you want me to do? What should I do? And I guess that's me, my personality. I'm like, what am I supposed to do to help this situation, this cause, whatever it is? I think there's sometimes I think that's a con. I think sometimes there's competing organizations, and you're like, well, they have a good point. They have a good point. Maybe they're opposed in some way, and they each have good things that they're saying because they're saying it from their perspective. And sometimes you like they need to come together to the table and discuss this and figure out a way to come to some type of peaceable way to help people and have compassion without showing hate toward one another. So I think sometimes groups that can come up with their cause, but they come up with such a chip on their shoulder about it that it can make other people be antagonistic toward them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Explain that a little bit further. I'm trying to get where you're going with it, but I think I understand.
Well, I think you can look at it in sometimes in political things where people have different opinions about how certain things have been handled by our government or in our world. Some people, you just watch different news stations and sometimes things aren't as far apart as you think they are, but it's just the talking points and the way they're presented. Right. And it's like, don't you agree with them? Well, if you say you don't, then you're not compassionate. Well, don't you agree with them? Then you're liberal. Actually, if you guys would talk, you'd find out you have differences. Right. But there's some things that are in common here that can be talked about. I mean, I was surprised and pleasantly surprised a week ago when Sean Penn, who's very liberal in his views as an actor and everything, but he went to the Ukraine and he had a lot of things that he had on his heart about what was happening there. And he went on Fox News with Sean Hannity, who the only thing they have in common is their first name is Sean in terms of their views. But he agreed to go on there as long as they don't talk about other things besides the Ukraine. And they did. And it was a really good talk. It's like, oh, we can actually have conversation about things, even though a lot of our political views are opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think that's the part that drives me crazy is if you don't agree with this group and what they're promoting, then you're not you're for abortion or you're against abortion, because of something you didn't get on board with and sign a petition for and all these things that are that circulate that you feel like there's pressure to put your name on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's kind of this interesting, I guess, byproduct that comes with this support everything. There's all these causes, compassion all the time. Kind of society is you either have to be all in or you're against it. So if you don't support everything that we do and everything we say and everything we believe, whether it be an organization, whether it be a political party, whether it be whatever, the world we're kind of in is well, then you don't agree with us kind of thing.
Well, that's the part that is difficult today. And I mean, if you want to talk about a hot button issue, I mean, a lot of things have come out in the last few weeks about what Disney's doing now with promoting the transgender type of ideas with kids and shows. And then there's people you still have Disney Plus? You didn't cancel that yet? Or you're still watching a Disney movie? And so how much, there's this idea of pressure being put on us and to have compassion. You don't have compassion for this group if you do cancel. There's all this going on. So the fatigue comes from, what do I do as a person, as a pastor, as a dad, as a grandfather, as a leader? How do I handle these things? How do I personally choose to say what I support without ostracizing another whole group of people that think I'm mean and hateful because I said I agree with this or agree with that? It's very it's very dangerous, and it's also very it's just tiresome. It just wears you out. Oh my gosh, these conversations.
Everything has kind of become us versus them. Everything you care about, every group, organization has something against them, right? So it's if you don't fully support it and get all in, then you're against them, and that's where this kind of fatigue comes into the conversation. And I think, especially for I'm around high school students every week, and if they don't fully support what their friend is doing or what somebody in their school chooses to do, they're seen as against them, and they're seen as trying to pull that person down. And so it's where's this line? Where's the line between caring for somebody and loving somebody and being compassionate towards somebody, but understanding that doesn't mean you're going to agree with every single thing that they do.
If you don't agree with everything they do, then you don't love them and support them or have compassion for them.
Right. That's the idea.
It's just a few weeks ago in the message I was covering where Jesus spoke about the inside being more important than the outside, like of the inner purity mattering. And at the end, it was a list of sins that Jesus gave. And the fact is, it's be easier just to pass over that because we don't want to hurt people's feelings that are actually living in those sins right now. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, love doesn't mean you avoid confrontation or you say, and I 100% believe I can love someone even if I don't love their lifestyle or what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Some people say that's not possible.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if we've had a similar conversation on here before, but we talk about that a lot here. Like love does not mean acceptance every time. Right. And if God just accepted who we were, then Jesus wouldn't have come and died for us because, he didn't accept it. We were stuck in our position and we needed something else. And that's why Jesus stepped in for us, right? It wasn't just acceptance. And it doesn't mean that once we accept Jesus, we don't have to change, right? Because, love is not acceptance all the time. But anyway, so I just think if we start caring about everything, like we start giving ourselves passionately, caring, compassion about everything that's happening in our world. Mm-hmm. I think the negative effect and actually outcome of that is you actually deeply care about nothing. Would you say that's true?
I think you can get, you can become that type of person where you're almost numb to it.
Yeah.
And I've heard about this being a problem for people in our positions, with people that are teachers, people that are nurses, that are doctors, firemen, EMTs, people that are always in positions of caring. They get to the point where they come home from their work or they just zone out and they don't care about things they should care about, like their family, because they've given so much care to so many different people and different things. You have to guard yourself, I think, a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. Like, where's the line? I think, you work with students and you have, students that share their problems with you and you care about them. How many can you care about compassionately? I guess the profession I think about the most is people that are professional counselors and psychologists, and they meet with people hour after hour every day, people just pouring out their problems. Mm-hmm. How do you have the capacity to keep caring? And then, and I think of it when people share stuff with me and then I see them the next Sunday, I want to remember what they told me. And I'm like, you don't remember, and they shared something with you and you feel bad about that. And but I can't care for, 800 people in the way that I should or that they need. I mean, we know we have solutions for those things, like in the church, we have small groups, we have other things like that. But the truth is, I think when you put it on yourself to be that person that is compassionate about everything, you're heading toward burnout.
Yeah, I would agree. I think like passion and loving things and caring about things deeply, you can't do that about 100 things or they all just become surface level. It's the same. We talked about this with friendships like a couple months ago, where we talked about how if you have a bunch of friendships, they're only going to be this deep. But if you have a couple that are deep, then it allows you to have other ones. Like I think it's a very similar type of thing. And speaking of Disney, here you go. I had an Incredibles quote in here. But in The Incredibles, I forget who says it, but it says, if everyone is super, then no one actually is. And I think, did I mess up the line? David's shaking his head. I can't, I think it might be the bad guy who says it. I don't remember. But that's the idea. Like, if everything is deserving of your utmost attention, your utmost passion, your utmost care, then nothing actually is number one in your heart. Like, and I just think what the kind of situation we found ourselves in with this whole idea of compassion fatigue is we care about all these problems and these issues, and Jesus and Christianity just becomes another one of those things. And so there's nothing that's actually taking precedent and is actually number one, because we care about everything all the time, or at least we're told we're supposed to. And we don't understand this whole idea that actually Jesus, our faith, Christianity, is supposed to be a step above all that stuff. It's okay to care about and have issues that you are partial to and you're passionate about. I think that's great. I think we were all created differently with interests and passions and problems and experiences and pasts and all this stuff that makes us care about different things. But we got to get back to this place where we're like, yes, I have all these hobbies and interests and passions and cares, but Jesus is above all that.
Well, isn't that kind of similar to what I mentioned in the sermon yesterday about priorities? When the woman Mary poured out that expensive perfume on Jesus and people were criticizing her, and what Jesus was saying, like, I'm only going to be here with you for a little bit. And they were saying you should have sold that perfume, given the money to help the poor. And Jesus wasn't saying don't help the poor. Don't care about that cause. But what he was saying is priorities. What's the top priority? Relationship with him. And I think when we have all these other things that rise to the same level, or even become more important than us. And this is a problem in the church too. It can become, and I see it in some churches where they become so wrapped up in certain social issues that they're trying to address, which it's not wrong. Church should care. But the most important issue, the most important thing that we should be about as church is changing people's lives by giving them Jesus and a relationship with him. That's where it starts.
Right.
I mean, I think feeding the homeless, we do that. I think clothing, I think all the things, like we did a diaper drive and gave 28,000 diapers last month to moms that don't have the money to be able to buy. That's awesome. I mean, those things are all things that we should be doing. Right. But the first thing we should be doing is bringing people to Jesus more than anything. And if we lose that mission, then we've lost the most important thing.
Yeah. I think this is really a conversation about keeping the first things first, right? You can have second things. That's not a conversation of, hey, you can have nothing else in your life, but it's keeping the first things, the most important things first. And we believe that that's, Jesus, and we believe that's a relationship with him and walking with him every day. And maybe a byproduct of that first thing is your heart breaking for social issues and caring about people. I think that's true.
I do.
But you got to keep the first things first.
Right. and in a church, people will come to the church with their own, because hundreds of people all have their different passions, and so they bring it and they want you to be as passionate about what they are passionate about, and you can't be. It doesn't mean you don't care. Right. It just means like that doesn't rise to the level of something that touches my heart the same way it touches yours. But go for it. Right. But don't be upset with me if I don't come to your rally or if I don't give money to it or make it a big deal in my life, because I can't do everything that everybody else thinks. So. But I think that's the awesome way that God's gifted us all with different passions, so that a lot of things can get done for the good in the world. So
yeah. What are some things that you care about, that you're passionate about? It can be hobbies, but like, what are some things that you care about that I don't, or other people in the room don't?
I know baseball is one of those things.
We had this conversation.
Yeah, I asked you the other day when we were leaving the gym. I said, can you name any? I named the top 2 baseball players, and you hadn't really heard of Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. I said Mike.
I knew his name.
I said Mike, and the last name is name of a fish, and you're like, tell me, Mike Trout. So he said you'd heard of him. So anyway, that's something that I love baseball, right? And coach baseball, follow baseball my whole life. You're in the sports too, and there's some sports we both like, but so that's one of those things that I love, and that's a thing that I just enjoy and find a lot of fun in and enjoyment in that. So it's always been. Yeah. How about you? What is?
Man, I guess I should have prepared for the question.
I mean, you asked me a question. I throw it back. Yeah.
I don't know. Like I like movies. I really like movies, and there's certain movies that I get all into and I get excited about, and it's like I know a lot of people don't feel that way, and that's totally fine. But it's like I have to understand that if I tell you about, hey, there's this thing that like I have to understand that you're gonna listen, but you might not care, and that's totally cool. Like, but
I think that we're both sensitive to this too, like. Because we're friends, we know that. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I want to talk to you about all the box scores from this weekend's baseball games. I'm not going to, because I know you don't care. And when you have friends that, you know they don't care about certain things, it's kind of like, okay, understand that about each other and be like, okay with that. And I think that's a good part to go, maybe a good place to go in this conversation is, we need to be understanding of people that don't have the same passions as us. And we need to be like, okay with that. And and not be so judgmental of people that don't jump on board with whatever it is. I mean, we're talking about things, baseball and movies that are not life-changing things. They're just fun hobbies. But when we talk about other things that are, big things in the culture, like just because we talked about diabetes awareness. I have a friend, so I care more about that. But there's other diseases, that there's Alzheimer's things, there's other things that you hear about all the time. Like I can't get passionate about everything. Right. I mean, there's people in the church that are. Just understand that, and we understand each other, that we can't all be passionate about the same things.
And that's the other side of the conversation. It's kind of like, but when somebody does say, hey, or they start telling you about something they're passionate about, I do think there's an aspect of listening and learning from those things. And when somebody comes to me and says, oh my gosh, did you see what happened with this? And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And they start telling me about it. And I'm into that conversation. I'm listening. I'm trying to learn. Like that shows that I love them and I care about them. Yes. But at the same time, I'm probably not, I could, but I'm probably not going to go and change my life around that thing. You know, like
exactly.
And I think it's kind of like a recipe for failure in relationships if you expect everybody to care about on the same level everything that you care about. You know?
Yes, but in your position and mine, like sometimes people do that, and you listen. I listen. I try to be a good listener and care. And then if they think that, they hear that they're being heard sometimes, then they'll send you a link and say, look at this and read this. And you're like, oh gosh, I can't go that far. I don't have time or capacity for that. And that doesn't mean I don't care about that. I just don't have the capacity for that. And if you try to do that for everybody, what are some, we use the word burnout, but what are the actual physical or emotional effects that you feel like when you've done
trying to care about everything all the time?
Yeah.
I think it can get to the point of when you don't even care about yourself. Like you're not even thinking about yourself and what you need, which is important sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, mental health and physical health, and you don't even take care of yourself because you're so busy caring about everybody. Yeah. I think that can happen.
Self-care is a big one. Yeah.
Trying to think of some other ones. I think it also just takes up a ton of space in your head, which is also self-care. But I think like it's just you're constantly thinking about, oh, that person told me this, and this person's going with this, and this person's thinking about this, and this happened today. I got to text them because this movie came out that they want to watch, and then there's like they posted about this. I got like it can just become a lot.
It can become fill up your headspace with things that don't matter, or they matter, but you just don't have the capacity for. I think we can become moody. Just in general, we have this overload on us, and we don't realize that we start getting less tolerant of things that are important and people that are important in our lives because we're trying to be everything to so many different people or organizations. There's a lot like that.
I also think too, like when this whole idea of compassion fatigue comes into play and you start to, really give yourself to so many people and everything that they care about, it kind of becomes codependency where, Steve, if you're not okay and you're not happy with me, then I'm not okay. And so I'm going to start caring about all these people in my life and give everything I have to them and care about everything that they have all the time, all these people. Compassion fatigue is going on. And then, oh my gosh, I didn't think to text Steve about that one thing. And now he's upset with me. So now I'm not okay. And it's affecting all my other relationships. It's just kind of this
it's a very
big melting pot, I guess.
It's exhausting. It is exhausting.
Yeah.
And so that's, and you, like you said earlier, it does go back to the circles
it does.
Of influence and having people in your inner circle, next circle, and you just can't please everybody.
Because there's people in your inner circle, I do think real relationships are based on caring about what they care about. And so that's the other side of this conversation of if you do know who your circles of influence are and the people who are close to you, you need to care about the things they care about. You might not be as passionate as them.
Yes.
But you care and you give time to it. And there's days when you sacrifice what you want to watch or what you want to do because, you care about them.
I have conversations with, the people, you and others that we work with about things that I'm not that passionate about because I care about them and what they're passionate about.
Right.
It's just something you do for people, but you can't do that for everybody. Right. And that's where the fatigue comes in when you try to be like that for everybody. So, yeah.
So let's start to, we can kind of land this conversation. How do we have healthy compassion? If we're called to be compassionate, we're called to care about the things that are happening around us, the things in the people's lives that we love. And so how do we have healthy compassion? How do we do this whole idea of caring for problems, caring for issues, caring for other people in a way that is healthy, the way that Jesus has called us to be compassionate, but not slip into this whole idea of compassion fatigue where you're really not caring or loving anybody? What do you think? What's maybe some steps that we can talk about? I don't have a real answer for this.
You don't have an answer. I think it starts with,
obviously,
I think it starts with the heart. Where your heart is. And if you're not spending time with God and you're not making him the priority in your life, what you do show in compassion is going to end up, I think, falling flat and coming across as fake. It's going to catch up to you. So if your heart's not full from a relationship with God that is through your own time with God, worshiping God through, that can be on your own or in church. If you're not filling yourself up, then you don't have anything to give. So it starts there. I think that's where it starts. And then, that's, I think, the first thing. Do you agree with that? Yeah. Like we talked about yesterday, the priority of loving God and making that the thing. And then after that, out of that flows compassion for other people. But our tank can get empty very quickly if we don't, if we're just giving out. So I think there's a place to start. And then I think, we've already been talking about some of the solutions here, but landing this on picking certain things that you are personally passionate about and sticking with those.
Yeah.
I think they can change. Yeah. I think new things can come into your path that you didn't have in your life before. I thought about it recently because of baseball. You talk about that. My youngest son is in 8th grade. So probably a couple more years, he'll be in high school next year. I won't be coaching as much and it'll start fading. And I was like, I wonder what I'm going to do with that time. Because I love that investment of time, but I wonder what I'll do with that. And there may be some different things that I start investing in more than that. I don't know. But I think it becomes it's about knowing our limits too, and like having people that you can ask and say, am I coming across as fake or insincere? I think being honest with the people in your life that do have passions for things that you don't, I think it depends on what level you are with them, but I think in our positions too is never, or being careful not to overcommit to something that we aren't really into, because it's easy when people beg us or wanting them to feel loved to say yes to things that we really shouldn't say yes to.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of this balance between protecting yourself and caring about deeply the people that are close to you in your inner circle and the things they care about, and obviously you can't care about everything all the time, but I do think it is important. There is an aspect of this of always being willing to learn and always being willing to listen, always kind of being a student to what other people care about. You may not jump all in and, hey, I'm going to support this and give money to it, and you may not do that, but at least being willing to have a conversation and say, okay, is this something I should care about? Is this something that maybe should spark my interest? And I think that's an aspect too. Don't just go through life and I have the things I care about and the people I care about and that's it.
It can be selfish.
Yeah.
It can become a person that comes across very selfish, and maybe that's who you are, and you don't give of yourself at all, and that's just doing the hobbies and the things that you like, and that's not fair. That's not, God put you on this earth to make a difference, to contribute, not to just consume, and I think that's so important. Yeah.
And I think, in everything, just go back to the place of, hey, God was compassionate to us, right? I mean, he was the most compassionate to us because he allowed his son to die for us. And if we're following his example, then we should be compassionate. And there are going to be times when it probably stretches you and pulls you and empties you. And that's okay, because if you come back to this place of, well, God was compassionate with me, and so therefore I'm called to be compassionate with other people.
Yeah.
But I do think, from a health point of view, this compassion fatigue is really real, and we got to set up these barriers, these guardrails to make sure that we're not just empty and just constantly like surface level caring about everything and everybody.
Right. Another guardrail I think that we should mention too is unplugging from social media and TV news, whatever it is that's pulling us into these areas of compassion fatigue, because you see things and you have friends that are all about certain causes, and that can wear you out. Maybe sometimes you have to mute people on social media, not defriend them, but just be to the place where I can't see their thing all the time, because it just makes me feel guilty for not contributing or not being a part of it, and that it wears on you. I know we have people that are listening that they don't care. Like, this isn't a hard thing for them.
Right. It comes out in personality too.
Yeah. Right. Because there's a lot of people that they're not affected by that. They just do their thing, and it doesn't mean they're not good people and they don't contribute. They just do what they want to do, and they say no easily. Right. I have a hard time, and I think it's just like, I don't want to let people down. Yeah. And I think that's part of ministry. Most people that are in caring professions, that's part of your job. But I don't do it because it's part of my job. It's who I am. I care genuinely, but it's exhausting sometimes, and it can wear you out. And if you're no good, then what do you have left? If you're not taking care of yourself, what do you have to give?
Right.
Not much.
Yeah. I think personality is a good thing to add to the conversation as we end it here. Just because, some people care about a lot more than others do. And that, you have the example of somebody who could hear something crazy happening in Ukraine, Russia, and be like, well, all right. And then you have the example of, I heard Judah Smith talk about this. There was a youth pastors conference, and he was talking about how in 2020, when everything happened with George Floyd and COVID and stuff was going on with his own family, and he had a panic attack because every time he would get on social media, he'd see another problem, and he didn't know how to help and how to care about all those things. And he was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, he just froze. And so, it just
that's
comes down
part
to
of it too. The not knowing what to do to help. Like, it's like, that's frustrating, and it's difficult, and I do think that's funny, because there are people that are listening to this and like, this is like pointless. Yeah, this podcast had nothing to do with me.
And maybe for those people listening that say, this isn't really my thing, then maybe the challenge for you is figure out how to be more compassionent.
Yes.
Maybe for you, it's not compassion fatigue, it's just compassion.
Yeah.
Figure out what steps to take to care about more.
There are people that that are like that sometimes you're like, man, nothing really seems to bother them. Yeah. So that's okay.
Well, anything else you want to add? I think we can kind of wrap this up.
No. It's Easter week, so I just hope everybody that's listening, watching, is making their plans, whether they're in town here and coming to Sycamore or living somewhere else. I just hope that everybody really takes a few moments to remember the sacrifice of Christ on Good Friday and on Sunday morning, celebrating the greatest day in history. I mean, we say that like a cliche, but it is.
Yeah.
And it's like I said yesterday, it's like we're celebrating next Sunday, but really as a believer, it's every day.
Yeah.
That there was no point in anything we do.
Nope,
if Sunday didn't happen,
yeah,
there's no point. So
yeah, it's a big deal. There's people who say without Easter, Jesus would have been a good teacher. He would have been, maybe a little bit of a prophet. He would have been, great things. But
Right.
without him, without Easter, that's all.
There's nothing.
And it's pretty crazy. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
a good
it's
week
good
to
with him.
celebrate and remind yourself
That's
of
right.
everything that's happened. So,
Yep.
Okay, well, I think this is it.
Yep.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Agree, disagree, send this to somebody who maybe needs to hear it, and let us know what you thought.
Yeah,
Send
email
your
us any
thoughts.
causes that we should be championing that we haven't,
Yeah.
so that we can feel guilty about that.
Or any topics,
Yeah.
questions, anything that you guys have. We wanna make this what you guys want to listen to. So thank you so much for listening,
Thank
as
you.
always, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the In All Things podcast. Our challenge for you today is to send this episode to one person. Seriously, think of somebody right now that could use this conversation and send it to them. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic ideas, please send them to podcast@sycamorecreek.org, and make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Sycamore Creek Church so that you can always see what's going on in our world. If this conversation helped you at all, make sure you share it, leave a review, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on a single episode. We love you, God loves you, and we'll see you next week on the In All Things podcast.